Welcome to another Facebook Live. Today we have Michael, and I call Michael our mad scientist in the back room. Been very grateful to have him, but I think I'll let you tell the audience, like, how long have you worked here? What's your position? What have you done while you've been at Taylor Studios?
Okay, well, I've been at Taylor Studios a little over 17 years now, which surprises me every time I say it. Done a lot of things here since then. Currently, I work with AV, electronics, and interactives. Started out working in structures. I've done model construction, I've done sculpting, fiberglass layup, plumbing, pretty much jack of all trades, the things that I've done here, which is great. It's a very broad range of experiences and a broad range of skills that I've got.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, like sort of halfway between in your career here, you went back for some additional training, which was really beneficial to Taylor Studios, and it's sort of a big wow. You added your AV electronic capabilities to the mix, and now it's kind of a whole new job in a way.
It is. I started out my education in electrical engineering. Then I went to technical theater, got a degree in scenic design and construction. So I've always had that blend going on. At a certain point, here at Taylor, I really wanted to focus on the AV and electronics side, so went back to school, got another degree, because who doesn't love having a sack full of degrees running around? And now I get to specialize on what I do, but even right now, just spent the last month working on sculpting an ice cave, which is very much not electronics. So I do what I like, then I get a break and do some other things. Those are interesting. So I get this really fabulous variety. And I'm the electrician that does all kinds of stuff.
That's kind of cool, though, right? The diversity of the work we get to do here. And so, I mean, in relation to that, I think maybe the next question is like, what advice would you give someone that wanted to work in this field, and what kind of training should they get?
Okay. Well, for doing fabrication, that's what I can speak to most, is a broad skill set, which would allow you to have, be able to move from task to task. So things based in three-dimensional visual arts, those are great, but also a background with construction. Because while we do sculpting, while we do mannequins and models, there's always some sort of a structure underneath everything that supports it. There's technical things to be considered. Does it have a water feature? Are you running plumbing? Does it need support to make it safe over an occupied space? Do you have electrical running? My big thing.
Electrical and water sometimes don't mix.
You definitely don't want them mixing. Yeah. Sometimes they're right next to each other. So all of those kinds of technical considerations go on beneath the shell of the artistic work that we do here.
Yeah. It kind of impresses us when people have had summer jobs doing construction, and they just know how to work and do a variety of things. So we were just joking about what's the most interesting thing we did here, and we were talking about kilts. We won't go there and those kind of conversations, but what's like the most interesting project or interesting thing that's happened to you while you've been here at Taylor Studios?
Really, one of the early big projects that I did has remained one of my favorite projects, and this is for Audubon down in New Orleans for the Insectarium. It was an area called Life Underground at 100 Times. It's like you've stepped into a microscope slide where everything's been magnified. The worms are giant, the ants are giant, the leaves are huge. And just something about the grand scale of that was a lot of fun. And it was this amazingly difficult and very rewarding install that we went on, and getting all of these huge pieces of giant chunks of earth and 40-foot long worms and things into that space. Yeah. It is a worm that pees on you.
And then the photo op with the spider that jumps out at you, that's pretty fun.
Yeah, we had a Trapdoor Spider in that would, based on input from a motion detector, would then come out from its trapdoor. We actually had to slow it down. It was scaring the younger folks a bit much. And it's just one of those things we often have to take into consideration, is how is someone who is 7 going to review this? How is someone who's 10 or 12? Their experience is going to be very different, especially when, as adults, we know what you're not supposed to do with this. Well, young people are frighteningly experimentative, and so you have to spend a lot of time thinking about, if I'm 12, what am I going to do to this thing?
You gotta know your audience. And the Insectarium is pretty cool. We've done several projects for them. If you're in New Orleans, go see it. They do some amazing work down there. So we've been really appreciative to have them as a client. Just even the metamorphosis in the hallway, it's just these beautiful sculptures of the butterflies and the
Audubon Nature Institute.
Audubon Nature Institute. It's the Insectarium in New Orleans. And we did the Bugs Life Theater with the trees, and we did their gift shop animatronic stuff in the gift shop there.
Yes.
Yeah. So speaking of that, like, what is the skill set you like to use the most? Because now you do a lot of electronic work. You've done sculpture. You've done structural work. Do you have a favorite you like to work on?
Well, the electronics field is my particular favorite. If I'm having the opportunity to design and fabricate circuits that control functions that we need, that's when I'm having my best time. But it's all degrees of really good, so to say that's the favorite is not to
so you don't like the other,
right.
But it's just sort of fun.
But
and that's
really
changed over the years, right? Now the work that he does, it's really intricate. I have to say it's art too. It's beautiful wiring. I love to come see it, how organized he has it. Maybe you can explain some of that. Like, I'm thinking of the one we just did for Arkansas where all the bird sounds went off at different times and how complicated that is.
Sure. Well, it's a job like that where there were 7 sensors that could all be triggered at the same time, each one triggering a sound that would be native to that environment, allowing the visitors to build kind of in a musical fashion the sounds of the forest. So this required some custom circuitry for controlling the capacitive sensors, but there's also mixing boards and audio amplifiers involved in it. So there's quite a mix of electronics and controls involved. You have to make all of this really organized. I might not be the person working on it. By virtue of having things organized and easy to get to, makes it easier for others who weren't in on it from the ground floor to be able to do maintenance. Makes it easier for the client when they open it up and it's not a spaghetti monster. You really don't want that. It makes a client feel better about what they've received if it's organized, it's tidy. In the trades, it's referred to as doing things in a workmanlike fashion. That means
easily accessible, because you never know who's going to do the maintenance at these sites either.
Right.
It could be a volunteer, it could be someone that knows a little bit about IT, or it could be someone that knows nothing about IT.
Right.
Maybe explain one of your biggest challenges in helping a customer.
Sure. We have a customer out in Pennsylvania who has probably 7 or 8 computers operating interactives, from simple motion detective interactives to touchscreen interactives. The power out there is terrible. It's what we call
remote,
dirty power, and that's hard on the systems. So we have had to put a lot of buffering in, from filter circuits to battery backups, in an attempt to protect the electronics. But because of its remote location, its distance from Taylor, we try to work with the client to have them being our eyes and our hands on site. That gets them their equipment up and running the quickest when they can be there doing it and we can be talking them through it. And again, if things are organized, and we have documentation back here, I can say, now the thing on your left, look to your left, you'll see the red wire. Don't cut the red wire, the bomb will go off. Now I never say that, but you want to be able to talk them through it. And that's worked very well for us. It's worked very well for them. They've had shorter downtimes when there have been problems as a result of this dirty power, because we could work
That'd be a
with
good
them.
band name, Dirty Power.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's one of the ones that's been presented a lot of challenges. We learned a lot in that, in how we try to make complex systems involving computers and custom circuits for clients that really, the people on site, they know skinks and bats and the local fauna. Computer systems were not the thing they ever really wanted to be up their eyebrows in, but they've got them now. So we try to work with them.
It's not their skill set.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Their specialty is elsewhere.
Yeah.
So they find themselves sometimes feeling nervous about opening up the cases and beginning to work. But again, with the organization, the documentation, we're able to walk them through things. we've done it enough times now that they don't have those fears. They know what they're getting into. If there's a problem, they can call me, call Betty, one of us. We'll get back with them quickly, and we will help them out. And we've managed to get things working again every time so far.
Yeah, cool. That job reminds me of one of the interesting stories that I won't go into, but one of the funniest, weirdest things that's happened to me was in Pennsylvania, because they have bats, by the way. I swear, the wingspan's like an eagle. But what's the most funny, interesting thing that's happened to you while at Taylor Studios?
Oh, at Taylor Studios.
Or a project, or something that happened on the road, or an interesting place you traveled, or...
Sure. We were doing a job up in just north of Chicago, where we were installing a giant bird's nest. It was an amphitheater. To give you an idea, this nest is about 65 foot in diameter. And the site was easy to see from the road, but it was across a ravine with a river in the bottom of it. And we ultimately had to go through a construction site next door to get the pieces, each of which weighed in excess of a ton because of the structure underneath to make this, having to use off-road fork loading equipment. So going hiking through the woods with 2,000, 3,000 pound pieces of exhibit,
yeah.
which is, when it's not assembled, delicate. Once it's assembled, it's fine, but kind of like an egg. Eggs are really tough until you break them, and then they're really weak. While the exhibit pieces are in individual chunks and things are sticking out, that was really a delicate maneuver, driving these pieces through the woods. And meanwhile, there are people out. It's a park. And so crowds would gather watching us work. And boy, that'll make you nervous. If 1 or 2 people watching you makes you nervous, you'd sometimes have 10 people standing just across the sidewalk seeing what we were doing.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. That thing tossed. That'll
indeed it is.
withstand, if they had hurricanes in Chicago, I think they'd be okay.
But seriously, it would be.
Yeah.
It's made to take it.
It's Fort Sheridan, yeah. It's the red-tailed hawk nest and several other big wow exhibits we did there. It's been, it was challenging. You know, when the client initially said, let's do this, I was like, wow, that's a lot of money for one exhibit. But I recently talked to them and they're like, it is the exhibit. People now know that park because they know the nest. So that big wow was a really successful exhibit. So sometimes having to install in the middle of the woods is worth it. It works. Mm-hmm. We good? Well, thanks for joining us. I am so grateful to have Michael for 17 years. It does, you know, I do feel old. The other day, I was at ANCA, and we were talking to Chippewa Nature Center, and we asked them when we had done their exhibits, and it was in 2000. And Brant, who was with me, goes, I was in high school then. And Jackie the other day was like, when did you start the company? And it was 91, 92. She's like, I was 5. So I'm glad you're probably not as old as me, but you're here with me for 17 years. Mm-hmm. So we're the old pups here at the company. Well, I hope this was fun and beneficial to you. Thanks for joining us, and so grateful to have Michael on the team.